Cam and Judd. Judson.
You know, not getting water in it. And now, I mean.
Hey, I'm out of focus, Cameron. Will you twist it real quick? Yeah, yeah.
Which way?
Keep going that way. Keep going that way. Right there.
But there's the mic.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Eastern Current. I think this is episode 27, and this is the first episode without the supervision of Billy, the tech whiz. And so hopefully everything's moving smoothly. If y'all can't hear me or hear us or anything like that, or if anything happens on here, let us know, because I'm trying my best to make sure. I've been doing a lot of practicing. Billy came over here last night and really helped me dive in, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to take this gum out first, actually. And do my best to keep things running smoothly. But we're excited about tonight's show. We got Captain Jot Owens on. We're going to introduce him here in just a second and bring him on camera. But first, we're going to do the don't get too excited yet, Jot. So he's not in here yet. He's running late. We're just buying him some time. But yeah, we're going to talk about striper fishing in general, but with a focus on the Cape Fear River here and some of these river estuaries in North Carolina that you can target striper in. But yeah, Cameron, how you feeling, man?
Feeling good.
First show, just you and me. We're excited.
Yeah.
We miss you, Billy, but we're excited to take things and keep running with it. But yeah, so let's do the little sponsor shout out real quick. Forget the whole flow of this, but I just want to thank some guys that have really helped us with the co-promoting of this, and companies that we're real connected with. And first and foremost, it's I Strike Fishing. Dave and Ralph over there are just awesome dudes. Have some great products, and they're always, I mean, he's texting me every Tuesday, hey, send me the picture so I can post it. I want to help y'all out. And he's a great dude, and just excited to be working with them. AFCO and Marshwear, two clothing companies that we work with, and they've given us a lot of stuff to give away. They also co-promote a lot. CT Custom Lures is a great dude in town that ties custom flies and custom lures. Hold on, you guys. Here's the first mix-up. Is that my phone over there?
Yeah.
On there? Will you sneak around there and press? I thought I put it on Do Not Disturb. Adam DeBruin is calling me. He probably knows I'm live and wants to. So if you swipe up from the bottom, you can pop it out of there too if you need to, Jot. And press that little moon. If you swipe up from the bottom, and you can have the Do Not Disturb moon.
Oh yeah.
Do you see it?
It's not gonna let me do it.
If you need to, lift the top of that little grasp up, and you can slide the phone out. There you go. It just lifts up. It's on like a spring. There we go.
You can switch the
Oh,
camera.
there we go.
Yeah, we'll switch the camera real quick. Oh, cool. And then we'll do this one right here. Boom. Here we are. I thought I'd put on Do Not Disturb. But yeah, so AFCO and Marshwear, great clothing companies. If you haven't checked them out, definitely go check them out. And Ceto is our other one. Ceto, if you get in a bad spot on the water, it's nice to have them to come pick you up, drag you off a sandbar, do whatever you need to do. You got it?
To bring it back.
Oh, click the little camera app. See the little camera right there? Shoot. Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Jot's helping us out. There we go. We're dialed.
It was on Do Not Disturb, by the way.
It was?
It was.
Hey, so it wasn't my fault.
Got it back on.
All right, let's see. There we go. We're back. We're live. Adam DeBruin, I hate you, but we're going to bring you back on the podcast sometime to tell some more client poop stories. But yeah, so Cameron, let's introduce Jot Owens here. I'll let you do that.
Yeah, sure.
I guess all you got to do is say, here's Jot Owens.
Yeah, here's Jot.
I'm a little flustered right now. So Jot Owens, there he is, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening.
How's it going?
I can't complain. It's 72 degrees today. Tomorrow's high is 44. Welcome to North Carolina.
Welcome to North
I enjoyed
Carolina.
today. I took advantage of today on the boat.
For sure.
Did you go fishing today?
I did not. Today was maintenance day on the boat.
There you go.
I wish I was fishing, but it's the time of year. If you got a day, you got to do it. It was a little windy.
Sometimes maintenance day, if you've got a nice cold beer and the weather's just right, it can be almost just as fun as fishing. I feel.
Oh, I had the music on. I got a
Jam
lot
out.
done. It was a productive day.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're going to be talking, like we said, striper with Jot tonight, and so we're just excited to. Golly, Do Not Disturb. My phone does not work, by the way. So sorry if you have any pop-ups on here. I'm going to just start using this other camera. But yeah, Cameron's got some questions, and if y'all have any questions, just fire them. But we're going to get started with Jot here and just get going. So we'll do this one right here.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your history, how you got into striper fishing.
Well, I've lived here my whole life. I've been in the fishing industry my entire working life, or in the industry a little over 26 years. I've been guiding now for it'll be 21 years in February. And the river's one of those places. When I was younger, I fished it with some friends, striper fish from time to time, little cat fishing, but I didn't do it a lot. I went to the river in the wintertime when fishing wasn't that good per se at the beach, and to me it was like a dark and mysterious place. It's so different. It's, high current, deep water, just real different.
Lots of logs to run into.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so it's so different than what it was. Just 5 miles away at the beach, so I liked it, and I went quite a bit as a child. Me and my dad would go fishing and go with friends and catch some stripers and catfish, and then I kind of got away from it, and I was saltwater fishing. I commercial fished for a while. I worked on some offshore charter boats for quite a while as a mate. Worked towards my captain's license, got my captain's license, and then probably about the last, I'd say about 16 years, maybe 16 years this year. I've been really fishing the river hard, every winter, multiple days, every week, and it's been it's not easy to catch fish down there. It's not. I mean, I won't lie to you. You have really good days, but there are days where everything seems like it's just right, and you cast and cast and cast, and you can't get a bump. But there's some things we'll talk about tonight that I'll lay out for you that make a big difference. And I've learned now, when I get down there, I can kind of tell you if I'm gonna have a good day or a bad day by some of the different things I look for in the water that tell me if they're going to bite or not. And for me, that's a big thing, because these fish, they're really particular on conditions. They really are particular on some conditions, unlike some other fish. So,
did you say more so than trout? They're particular on conditions.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I would say overall, yes. Trout have their times where they get more particular, especially when it gets colder.
Yeah, and
the stripers will follow the same suit. But even when it's warmer and that striper bite's really good, when those water temperatures are a little warmer, they can cut right off if certain conditions aren't as good.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Not to say you can't catch them, but I can get down there usually when I get to the boat ramp and I'm going up the river with my customers and looking at the water quality, especially the water quality, how the water's moving or the water looks, and I'm thinking, it's not going to be that good of a day, or and it's going to be a good day. And it follows that suit very closely for me.
I think that's a good transition into what are the certain types of elements that you're looking for a good striper spot?
Striper spot or conditions?
Conditions.
All right. Well, conditions for me are they're fair weather fish. They like a bluebird sunny day, and not a lot of fish do. But it seems like these fish in the river, they really like those sunny days. Sunnier days seem to be a little bit better than cloudier days. Lighter winds, but that's more of us having to fight the wind and the current. So I like lighter winds, bluebird days, and I want that water to have some clarity to it.
Now, high pressure.
Yeah, high pressure, or on the backside of.
Not just high pressure.
Yeah. Which good fishing, but where your winds aren't that heavy yet. But clarity of water. Now, the water's brown. It's not clear.
Right.
But when that water's got that dark, tannic, black look to it, which is really clear water, you drop your lure and
like
you
a
can see
stained color, like a tea.
Yeah. When it's got that deep black, that's when they like to bite. You start getting some of that creamer in that coffee, and when you put that lure in the water and it's harder to see, I still catch them, but man, it gets tough.
Yeah.
Man, it gets tough when that water gets dirty. And in the wintertime here, we get a lot of wind and a lot of rain.
Yeah.
Luckily, that river has high flow, so it cleans up pretty quickly. And usually when the 3 or 4 days is back, on lower tide, sometimes you'll see prettier water. Sometimes you'll need that water from the ocean to come up on a high tide. Maybe it depends on where the dirty water is. If Raleigh, Fayetteville, inland gets a lot of rain, sometimes into that fall it'll be dirtier, where we'll start getting a rising tide or bring that ocean water up. The ocean water will be a little clearer, so you get a little better bite. If it's been really still and had much rain, typically the falling tide is a little better because it brings that black tannic water, which is the clear water, down, and the bite's a little better. You kind of got to watch it. It's one of those things. It's literally a daily change sometimes. A day between the weather, the wind, and everything.
So how do you, say you have clients coming in town that really want to striper fish? How are you forecasting this?
Well, I will typically, for me, it's a number one, it's going to be tide. Number two, it's going to be the weather, and also it can be the temperature. If it's going to be in the teens in the morning and breezy, I'm probably not going to bring my customers out in that. I might go out in that, but understand that I'm in the customer service industry, so we might bump it back a little bit. The good thing is about these fish is they'll bite in the middle of the day. I mean, they are not particular to a morning or afternoon bite. Now, sometimes in November, early December, when the water's still mild, that topwater bite can be great early in the morning. They like that low light for the topwater, but once it gets colder and they seem to push down a little bit, they're not as aggressive on the topwater, I don't mind going later in the day and looking for those more comfortable conditions for us, because it's a long day of casting, and if it's cold, you get complacent after 30, 40 casts. The customer, you see the rod go thump, and they don't even react, and they look at me and said, "I had a bite," and I said, "I saw that. Why didn't you set the hook?"
Oh, that's my least favorite thing.
Because they haven't gotten a bite in 30 casts, and they become complacent. So
Right.
every cast you got to be on focus. I mean, you do, because that thump could come along
for sure.
So it seems like winter is the best time to fish for stripers around here.
Well, I tell you, I talk to a lot of people that do it, that fish year round for these fish, and I'll give you a very dumbed down cycle of these fish of where they go. And what we found from tagging studies and from people fishing is that typically these fish in the summer months are everywhere. They just spread out. They go upriver, they go downriver. They're downtown. They're all down to Snow's Cut, even to Southport. They're up the river to 1 and 2 Dam, Lock and Dam. They're way up the northeast. The bass fishermen are catching them up the rivers and bass tournaments. The trout fishermen and flounder fishermen are catching them in the river. They're spread out. And then you start getting into the fall, and it seems like they start concentrating down lower in the river, especially around downtown Wilmington and that area. Why? We don't know why, but we're hoping with tagging studies in the future we're going to find out why they like downtown. But they seem to congregate in downtown Wilmington, down in that lower part of the river, and then as spring comes along, typically sometime in mid-April to late April, early May, they start making their spawning run and running upriver. Now, does this mean all the fish do it? No, it does not. But it seems like a lot of the bigger fish will start heading up the river late April and early May for a spawning run. And we'll notice that by tagging studies. We've watched these fish just literally late April and May, just watching the listening stations. These fish are tagged with sonic tags, and so when they go by, the listening station picks up the information. That stuff gets downloaded once a month, and every time a tag passes by, the number, the date, and the time is put down. And you put this together on a map, and late April, early May, they start shooting up river. Then they kind of turn over. And we're in spring, they start spreading out again, the cycle turns over again, and they start hunkering down for downtown. So for me as a guide or an angler, winter fishery, these fish don't mind it being colder. And I found that typically when it gets, not that it gets too cold to catch speckled trout, but when it gets harder to catch speckled trout, I will switch over to striper fishing because they will bite on to those lower water temperatures a little better than the trout will. So it's instant gratification. It's catch and release fishery, but man, even a 2-pound striper on light tackle, they fight like redfish.
Oh yeah,
they're a lot of fun
in current and deep water.
Yeah. So they fight really good, and I mean it can be you can catch we've caught 14-inch fish, and we've caught fish all the way up to close to 30 pounds, and so that thump goes, you set the hook, and it's either it's a small one or whoa. So it's just a lot of fun. It kind of breaks up the monotony around here. For me, the best fishing is typically December to somewhere in mid to late January. Mm-hmm. Then when the water gets down, usually when the water starts to get down into the mid to lower 40s, the fishing gets tougher. Now, you can catch them. And if we have a mild winter, I've had phenomenal Februarys. But typically, your November, especially December to mid-January is good. And then early to mid-March, sometimes later March if it stays cool, to late April. And then late April, it's like a light switch. It almost cuts off. They start going on their spawning run. Yeah. You still catch smaller fish, but I've been in early April where it was really good. We'll have a little bit warmer weather. Water temperature come up to degrees, and I'll go again and only catch 1 or 2. Yeah. And then I'll talk to the people at the state. They're like, "Oh yeah, they started making their run," and they start picking them on the listening stations. They're making their move. So it really correlates to that. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's a good. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying that's a good connection to have. I remember after college, one of my buddies was a marine biology major, got a job tagging fish, and so I would call him when I was going striper fishing. I was like, "Hey man, where'd y'all roll some fish when you were shocking last week?"
That's it.
And then be able to go. And honestly, it really never paid off, but it felt really good. Like I don't know, maybe the fish leave after that, but
well, at least you know they're there or not. They might not be biting. I mean, but at least you know they're there.
Exactly. So we had a good question here that kind of leads into still talking about the similar, but it says obviously nothing specific, but how far up the river do you fish, i.e. Southport, Snow's Cut, south of Wilmington, north of Wilmington, which kind of leads us into the whole idea of like, what are you looking for these fish? Like what's their holding water? Like where are you targeting these fish? Exact spots and GPS coordinates.
No problem. Yeah. I'll get right on that. So I will tell you as far as distance goes, and I know that they're everywhere in the summertime. I don't fish for them much. I have gone a few in May a couple times as our season starts to roll over charter fishing. I've had some really good days on topwater in May. But that's rare for me because usually by May I'm down at the beach fishing drum and trout and flounder and stuff like that. Whatever's open at that time. But for me, the wintertime downtown fishery, if let's say I'll just put a pin on the battleship. Usually I'm fishing about 2 or 3 miles downriver from there. The Brunswick River Point. Yep. The big power lines down, heading on down south of the port. That I don't go much further than that. Now, are they down there a little further? Probably.
What's the furthest south you've caught them?
Well, I mean, in summer months, down the river, I've caught them all the way down to Buzzards Bay and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're summer months, and that's when they spread out. Wintertime, I think the furthest I've caught them on a regular basis has probably been south of the port.
Okay.
In that, in the power line range area.
Yep.
That's on a regular basis. But I don't go down much further than that. I kind of fish areas that I know and I like and I'm comfortable with. That's a lot to do with fishing. Be confident in where you fish. And then up the Northeast Cape Fear, I will fish on a regular basis up to about Castle Hayne, a lot of the Turkey Creek mouth, those creeks, all those big creeks there. Yep. Are they higher than that? They absolutely are. I talk to locals all the time. So for me, it's probably 4 or 5 miles up the Cape Northeast. Mm-hmm. And probably 2 or 3 miles up the northeast. Okay. The only reason I'll go further up the northeast is because sometimes we have big tides. The bridge on that side is really low to the water.
Yeah.
Coming at the intersection of the Brunswick and the Cape Fear, and I don't want to get stuck. So let's say it's a start of a fall and the tide's down enough I can get under that bridge, I will go on up and fish. And there's some really good fishing up the Cape Fear from there. It just depends on conditions. Right. Also, you got to think about this too, is sometimes the Northeast is dirty, sometimes the Cape Fear is dirty. That can make a decision for me on where I fish. I'm going to go where the prettier water is. And typically when I'm heading up the river from the bow ramp, I get to the Point Peter, I can look at the water right there, and if there's a nasty stain line and it's coffee with cream on one side and sweet tea clear on the other, I'm going to fish sweet tea. If it's perfect, I might just go, hey, where did I fish last time? Had luck, kind of go from there. Depends on tide and stuff.
So finding that clean water is
Clean
key.
water is so important. It really is. Even if you find a thread or a seam or a vein of it somewhere, that can make a difference sometimes.
Definitely. And there's a lot of little drainages even. Like you can start hunting around and finding smaller creeks that are coming in that might be a little cleaner.
And sometimes they are. Sometimes the little creeks are, because a lot of that prettier water stays up in them because it gets just as the time as that pretty water gets out, the tide changes and pushes the pretty water. That same pretty water, you think it wouldn't work, you think it'd cut off, but the way the river runs and the water moves, I've seen it where that pretty water comes down and it goes right back up in that creek. And I've been chasing it up a creek, staying in the prettier water, catching stripers until finally, all right, it's dead high tide. I got to go. So clean water is one of the more important scenarios for sure for fish. Yeah.
So saying you've got clean water everywhere. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about spots. Let's talk about what are you looking for if you've got all the conditions are perfect. Now it just comes down to what kind of stuff am I fishing? What do you look for as far as that goes?
Well, and this is going to sound just repetitive as heck, but everywhere. I mean, I've caught these fish in places once and I never caught them there again. And I've gone to places before just covering an area when I was fun fishing and caught fish I never had before. Number one thing I can tell you is more area you cover, the more fish you're going to catch, because they're not the easiest fish in the world to catch. And striped bass in general, a lot of people don't know this because we're used to them catching them in salt water and clear water, but striped bass in general have pretty poor eyesight. So take that and put it in dirty, stained, deeper water.
Yeah.
Even tannic water, let's say it's clear, but it's tannic and dark. The sunlight's not getting down very far. You got to almost hit them in the head.
Yeah.
And so covering more area, literally, and we'll talk about the lures and how to work them and stuff, but covering more area is going to be important. Number two, I can tell you, is they're very funny about angle. And this is a lot of anglers, you probably know this, but a lot of anglers don't understand this. And I see this all the time, is they'll go to a creek mouth. Creek mouths are great. Creek mouths are good for everything. Creek mouths are great for striped fishing. I fish a lot of creek mouths or stump fields or drop-offs. But fishing it at an angle. If I get to a creek mouth, let's say the mic here is a creek mouth, and my boat's out here and I'm casting towards it, some people anglers will go up, just cast right there, no bites, and move on. You're going to cast at every angle at that creek mouth until you get done, because I'm telling you, I've cast at this angle for 5 or 6 or 10 casts, no bites. Come over here, first cast, same spot landing, but come at a different angle, bam, get a bite. It happens all the time. And I think because of their poor eyesight, it's presented to them. They're seeing it, they're feeling it, they're hearing it better. It's in their face. And before maybe, because fish don't like something to come up from behind them.
No.
So depending on their angle, how they're sitting, for some reason, changing the angle and casting makes huge difference in getting these bites. So that's why covering that area. I'm not going to spend an hour at a creek mouth, but if I get a few bites, I'm going to keep throwing at that creek mouth and changing my angle until I stop getting bites. But I'm going to swing past those stumps or a drop off or a creek mouth and hit it at every angle before I move on to the next place, because it makes a big difference. Tell me how many times we've been drifting down a bank hitting creek mouths, and we'll be past a creek mouth we were just fishing with customers, no bites. And I'll tell a customer, hey, sling back at that creek again, right? Almost out of cat. They'll sling back, boom, first cast.
Yeah.
Casting back there, we casted 20 times and didn't get a bite, but as soon as we change angle at a good degree, we get a bite. And it really makes a difference.
That's good information there.
It really does. And I found that they usually are sitting on the ledges and drop-offs, whether the ledge is 1 foot underwater or 10 foot underwater. And so a lot of times you'll feel these lures rubbing the bottom, and as soon as it's not rubbing anymore, boom, you get a bite.
Yeah.
And I think what it does is it falls off that ledge or comes off that ledge, and they're sitting there waiting. And they hit it, and it makes a big difference. So, we'll talk about the lures again in a little while about how to work them, but low and slow and making sure you're covering a lot of area. Cast. I mean, and every cast is important, because if you're not getting bites, be ready, because I'm telling you, they'll thump this thing once, twice. They'll thump a lure once or twice, and if you don't get them, if you're not ready for it to set that hook, I've seen so many customers get just whacked, and they'll just jump a little bit because they've casted 30 or 40 times and didn't get any bites. And they weren't ready for it. So I mean, literally, you get nerves of steel. Any cast can be a bite.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
You're on guard when you're getting a lot of bites. But when you're not getting on bites, that's when you get that thump, and you think to yourself, I should have set the hook.
Yeah,
we're all guilty of it.
Oh, definitely, definitely. It is always a little frustrating though when they're like, oh, that was a bite, and then nothing, no rod was swung, nothing.
No. Now you know what it feels like.
Especially on a slow day.
Oh yeah, because then you're like, oh, you can't do that very often.
You're counting the bites that weren't fish. You have any more questions there about spots there, Cameron?
No. I think let's talk about tactics.
Okay.
Because I always hear about a lot of people trolling for striper.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing.
Yeah, no. Trolling form works. I will not lie to you. Trolling form works. What I prefer to do is, if I'm at a creek mouth or somewhere, if I have younger kids on the boat or people that can't cast that well, who are going to react when that fish bites. Because I'm telling you, when you're casting, they thump it. You got to hit them like a largemouth bass or a redfish. Mm-hmm. You can jerk as fast and hard as you want to. They have, they call them rockfish. I think called rockfish because their mouth is hard as a rock. Yeah. I'm telling you, you can hit them as hard as you want to. Sharp hooks are important. But if I have kids on the boat or people that don't fish very often, and I really think that they're not going to react, we're not going to catch fish because they're not filling the bite or they're not setting the hook on the bite, then I will troll. If not, I will troll sometimes to find the fish at a creek mouth or something like that, and then I'll start casting. But most of the time, either it's going to be a trolling trip or it's going to be a casting trip, depending on my customers. Mm-hmm. Now they're going to fish. I would much rather go casting. There's nothing better than feeling that thump. And setting the hook.
It's like a trout thump on steroids.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's even heavier than a drum. A trout's got a tick, a drum's got a thump. This is like a boom. It's really heavy. But it's quick. If you don't set the hook, they're not going to hold on. They hit it, and that's it.
Are you trolling like deep divers, or are you trolling paddle?
I use like crankbaits. Usually, like crankbaits run anywhere from 6 to 12 feet. Okay. And I want them close to the bottom, and they can rub the bottom sometimes. But if they constantly rub the bottom,
you're hanging.
You're going to lose them. This thing about difference is I fish the river probably, if I took the whole season together, maybe 15% of my season, maybe 20, but probably more like 15% of my season.
Yeah.
And I lose like 70% of my lures during the 15% if I took the whole season because it's timber. At the beach, it's grass and oyster rocks. You get your stuff back from that a lot.
Yeah.
It's timber in deep, dark water. And when you hook a hook into wood, you don't get it back.
Yeah, soft edge to that wood, a sharp hook, it's going in.
And then most of the time it's cypress, so it's soft on the outside edge, but it's really hard on the end, and it doesn't break off.
It's not coming out.
You'll lose so much tackle. So when we're trolling, I will use those crankbaits, bass crankbaits, do a little short. And I found that shorter ones get hung up less than the longer ones. Longer baits,
those hooks kind of stick up a little bit better.
Yeah, the longer ones, and they're made to roll off stuff. Where those bigger, longer lures are made for salt water, they're made for open water. You can catch fish on them, but boy, they get hung up a lot.
Yeah.
So if they rub the bottom every once in a while, it's fine. But if they're constantly, you see them rubbing, but the rod tip bumping, I'm telling you, there's a lot of times it starts doing it. If it doesn't more than 5 or 6 seconds, you can count the 10 that's going to get hung up. I'm telling you, it is, and you're like, there's no such thing as a cheap crankbait that works. They're $8 to $15 or more.
Right.
So I'll use like crankbaits like that. Soft crankbait, plastic bills with rolls. So they're a little bit, they give a little bit. They can hit the bottom some. The hooks aren't rubbing it, but if you keep on, what happens is it finally catches and it lays those hooks down. And when it catches and lays them down, and I'm telling you, I've drove the boat around in circles and yanking and pulling and everything. And typically you might come back with a split ring or a broken bill, but that's the best you come back with.
Yeah. So I was so curious to talk to you about this because the times that I've fished the river, I've probably lost every time, maybe 20 lures, 15 to 20. Is there any way? What are the ways to minimize how many lures you're?
Well, if you're using, and don't get me wrong, I will sometimes cast crankbaits as well. The problem is with crankbaits is that, crankbait, most bass crankbaits float. They don't go to depth until you start reeling them, and they don't get a depth for probably about 5 or 6 seconds or longer. So for me, if I'm casting somewhere, if I'm casting soft plastic and throw it out there, I can count down, and it's sinking down, and then I can start working it slowly. And, my favorite is going to be a swim bait just like this, weedless. But the great thing is when it's swimming, it's rubbing the bottom like this. The hook is nowhere close to any hangs. Now, here's very important. You can't stop fishing it. There's no jerking or jigging. You're just slow rolling, just slowly, almost as slow as you can reel. It's going to rub the bottom. That's fine, but it's going to rub the bottom like this. Now, if you stop and let it sit, it's going to sit on its side. Let me tell you, it's really bad. Customer catches a fish. Other customer sits rod and rod holder, one of these on the bottom, takes some photos, comes back. 99% of the time, it's hung up because it's been sitting out there as the boat's been moving like this, rubbing on the edge, and it finally finds something and gets hung up.
Yeah.
So you don't leave your lure in the water. I have so many times when
and if it doesn't find the bottom,
and I'm cleaning up like I'm reeling all this stuff. Like no, don't leave it out there.
So when you're throwing these, you're just working it really slow in the bottom, not even jigging it, just slowing.
No, jig it,
reeling it in
because when you
really
jig it,
slow.
it's going to turn all different directions. And it's going to find something. So it's down low and rolling slow. And I like a big old paddle tail because this thing does like this, but it also vibrates like this. So it's putting out a lot of vibration. Anything. There's some hook companies out there that make little spinners on them. Those work good too, but your hook price goes up steeply as soon as you put a metal spinner on there. So it's the kind of scenarios, maybe if the water's a little more stained or dirty, you might want to go to something that's got a spinner on it or something that makes a little more noise. Rattle traps work great, but Lordy, if you look at a piece of wood with a rattle trap, you're getting hung up and you're going to lose it. I mean, they work though. All that vibration, there's something to that vibration with them having poor eyesight that works, because the go-to in that river for years, all the old timers, was a rattle trap.
Yeah.
The problem is I have small fortune rattle traps in that river now. Do I still use them and cast them? I do.
Yeah.
But you got to be real careful and know the depth you're fishing. And when you throw that thing out there, that you immediately start reeling. And if you want to get it down some, you know that you knock a second off that drop before it gets to the bottom. Because there have been times I'm trying new places to throw a rattle trap out there, start to crank, it's already hung up. Yeah. I never got to move the lure. Yeah. So you just got to, it's going slow. So this is very cost effective. This is a Berkeley power bait grass pig. And so it's got a little bit of scent to it. People ask about scent. I know that stripers use scent. It hasn't been a big play in my game for this, but I always use a lure that is scented. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. Put some gel in there or something like that, spray some gulp spray on it, whatever. And I do use some gulp in the river as well. The problem is with gulp sometimes in the winter times, it'll be a little bit stiffer when it gets colder. So, you don't have to worry about pinfish, thank gosh. That's a good thing up there to worry about pinfish in the winter time. But this bait right here is very cost effective, and I've caught a lot of fish on it.
Yeah, I like a paddle tail as well, and there's a lot of different paddle tails that work.
Oh yeah, I mean, the reason I like this one is a little bit more compact, a little shorter, and I feel like we're starting to catch those little fish. We'll catch the little fish and the big fish on this one. Where some of the long ones are bigger, and don't get me wrong, these fish are gluttons. I mean, I've caught 14-inch stripers on 6 and 7-inch baits.
Yeah,
no problem, and had plenty of bites and miss them as well. So I don't think you have to be. This is just something that's affordable and works for everybody.
Definitely.
I mean, Hoagie makes some great baits too, but you just don't want to lose too many of them.
Exactly.
That's the thing. There is in my choice of baits is also, I think about what I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
In a lot of fisheries you don't. You're not worried about what you lose. But some fisheries you are. And this one I have to keep that in mind. What works and what are we going to lose less of that works as well, and what's cost effective. But a good, strong, sharp hook is important, because I don't care if it's a cheap hook or a good hook. They're both going to get hung up and get lost, but it is important when that fish bites. Check your hooks. If you get hung up, check that tip, make sure it's sharp. Rolled. When I run this weedless, I don't protect the tip of the hook with a rubber lure, because that will you'll miss a bite. They'll bump it, and I don't believe it'll swing. You want that lure to be able to swing down. A lot of people don't understand is this hook looks like it's a very big hook, like it's oversized. It's considered a 7/0. But what's so important about having a bigger hook like this is having that playing field, so when that fish hits, the lure can go down, so the hook's exposed. If the lure was not, if the hook's too small and that lure can't go down, the fish is going to hit it, and it's going to act like a weedless bait, but it's going to also be a fishless bait because it can't go down. So having that bigger playing field, some of these bigger bass swim bait hooks, I appreciate them, because you don't get hung up any more than you would with smaller ones. But when they bite, that lure can go down. They can push it down, and your hook's exposed. You can hook them, and that has made a difference. I've actually gone to bigger hooks because the hookup ratio is better. Remember, I'm dealing with customers that don't always fish a lot, so any kind of a little bit more time for them to be able to set that hook, it hangs in that fish's mouth for a little bit longer is important. And by going with a bigger hook with a swim bait is important, so you have that swing, that playing field in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go take care of this dog real quick. Y'all keep it to an interview.
Do
you ever catch like catfish?
Oh yeah, catch redfish. I catch trout. I catch catfish. Most of the time when I catch catfish, it's a little later in the year. It seems like they show up in bigger numbers, lower river. Later than the stripers, especially getting into January, February, and early March. And I've caught some 30 plus. Even one year we caught a 41-pound blue cat, and we thought we were hung up. The customer said, "I'm hung," and he kept pulling, and it started moving. I thought, "Nah, it's a big old catfish." It was a big cat. So you catch some of those. Catch occasional redfish, catch occasional trout, but once it gets cold, it's pretty much mostly stripers and occasional catfish. When that water temperature gets into the lower 50s, I see the drum population and the trout population head on down river to find that warmer water. Mm-hmm. The stripers will stay in the colder stuff.
It's interesting.
The stripers don't seem to leave or move much when it gets colder. They just seem to slow down in their bite a little bit. They're still there.
So talking about these baits, this is a question I had for you. For myself, it seems like striper fishing, I really just stick with 3 colors with soft plastic: chartreuse, white, pink. Do you branch out from that much? Do you fish a lot of colors? Or?
I do. Probably my favorites are chartreuse, a white, or kind of silver white, a silver flake. I prefer to be more white, but there's a power, but they make a silver one, a silver flake that's it's silver, but it's not like bright silver. It's like soft plastic silver.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And then another one I like also is called California. And it's it's kind of like a red and green speckle with almost like a black body, but it's got some brown. If you put it under light, it would be clear, but it takes a lot of light. Yeah. And it's kind of the when the water's really pretty. I'll go with when it's really, really clear and pretty. I'll go to those natural looking baits that are closer to it. And when it gets stained up a little bit, we'll go a little bit brighter, which is a little bit of a flip flop than you would for other fishing, especially like saltwater for me. Yeah. Typically, I use the brighter stuff in clear water and the not so bright stuff in stained water. But being this is tannic water, this water's brown. It's either brown and it's dirty, or it's brown and it's clear. Those colors that match the water a little bit closer. And I'm not talking about a turd brown lure,
right?
But new pennies, red flakes, brown and red flakes, green red flakes, stuff that matches a little bit more, but still has that flash. I love the glitter. I mean, everything's got some flash to it. I think that helps. I'll go with those little darker colors when that water gets clear, because it's kind of matching that. For because it looks natural to them.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've noticed fishing up there is like when the water is dirtier, it is harder to fish and harder to catch fish, but they eat it so hard when it's dirty. Like when they see it, they want to kill it.
They do, and I think they understand that they know that they don't know when their next meal is going to come. They haven't seen much, and so it's in their face. And no, you're right. The bite is the catch is less, but the bite is more aggressive when it's dirtier. For absolutely.
Hey, slide that mic a little bit. No, you're good. It's focusing on the mic. The camera's focused on the mic. Just a little closer to your face.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
cool.
There you go. Sweet.
Cool. When it's really dirty, would it be? Do you use topwaters more often?
Well, I mean, topwater fishing for me personally is only when it's warm. And I would say, honestly, for me, it's in upper 50s at the minimal. So I don't get to do a lot of that. If we've had a mild winter, I will. But when it gets colder, when the water gets dirty, they seem to settle down a little deeper. And I'm not talking about they drop down to 10 and 20 feet, but they just don't like to break that surface. For sure. Gotcha. And when I do topwater fish, it's usually typically for me, it's going to be in November, late October, November, or May, late April, May, when the fish are kind of turning over. It's going to be early in the morning, low light conditions, and that water better be pretty. If it's dirty.
Big old loud topwater.
Big old loud top. Honestly, or even top dog, like big, because it's really not the size of the lure; it's the amount of splash and noise it's making. And even some of the hybrids, like the northern striper lures, the baby rattles with poppers, you can't get too loud. Now you can work it too fast. You want to be really loud with it in a short amount of distance. Let it pop, pop, pop. Let it sit for a second. Pop, pop, pop. Like get real loud. Let it sit. Let them concentrate on it. It's not a constant, slow, monotonous work like a drum, just like covering area. You want to really get real loud and then pause. For sure. So you're not covering a lot of area, but you're making a lot of noise in a short amount of area.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. In a trout, drum will hit that thing when you stop. These stripers really hit it when you stop. It's going to be when you're getting loud. When you're not expecting it, you're going bam, 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 boom. They'll just come out of the water and get it. It's really crazy because it's not a normal what you would have in your mind of a topwater bite. It's coming when you're just raking it across the top.
One thing I've noticed too with the topwater, and in college I got really into the striper fishing here. That's probably when I did the most of my striper fishing was when I was at UNCW. But if you get one fish to eat a topwater plug, it seems like a lot. Like some of my better days have been it's feast or famine. Like I've had some really good days where you get in an area to where one fish eats a topwater and you can cover that. And typically I was getting a lot of bites in a zone of fish that were, looking up or thinking about eating off the surface.
And I'll tell you too, they also, if you get a bite early in the morning on topwater, it's usually going to be a good fishing day. And I found that if that topwater bite slows down, you get a lure that gets just under the surface, a swim bait like this, and just get it just under the surface, they will come thaw it right up and eat it.
Yeah.
And those are usually better days.
Let's dive into, I don't know if we did this, but with the swim baits and the hooks, let's just talk about weight for a second. The different weights that you like to fish. Is there one weight in particular?
I fish mostly quarter and 3/8.
Quarter and 3/8.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you can go heavier too, but if I go heavier, I know I'm going to be fishing water over 6 to 8 feet deep. Most time I'm fishing with these fish from 2 feet to 10 foot on average, just because I can get the lures to that efficiently. And I feel confident getting bites in that. But if you go with a heavier one, you've got to make sure you keep it moving. And if you go too heavy and you're not keeping it moving enough, remember, I'm trying to go as slow as I can. You might start getting hangs. You start dredging the bottom. I love for this lure to rub the bottom. That's fine if it rubs the bottom, but I want it to rub the bottom efficiently, where it's the weight is touching. That's it. So sometimes you get a little heavy, it starts to walk a little bit. But 3/8 is probably my go-to. Warmer water conditions, 1/4 ounce. I'm just letting it walk a little.
So it's similar to, and I feel like every time I ask any person we're interviewing this question, it's like as light as you can fish, but still be around the bottom well.
Oh, exactly.
You don't want it to be just diving super hard to the bottom.
Yeah, my saying about anything weighted fishing wise, as much as you need, but as least you can get away with.
Yeah,
and that's even a sinker on a bottom rig. You don't. There's no reason to go loud and proud. It just you get it out there and get it work. So as much as you need, at least get away with. Make small adjustments.
Yeah.
If you're using an 1/8 ounce and you don't feel like you're getting down there, don't go to 3/8. Go to a 1/4.
Yeah.
Make small adjustments. 3/8 and we're gonna go to half. Don't go to 3/4. And it makes a difference because you're still trying to make it look natural. You got to make it look good.
For sure. That's a good point. And so another thing that I've seen down there, and I struggle with this, is like fishing, because it seems like a lot of these striper are on the bottom, but do you ever fish suspended style baits? Like because a lot of times when I fish around the bridges and stuff like that, some of those fish are higher up off the bottom. Are those fish that you'll target?
I don't target those very much. I've had some scenarios where I was in open water, especially in the spring when they're starting to gang up. And we've had scenarios where, and I really think the scenario was the fish were following the fish we had on.
Okay.
Because I have netted twice in my life. I've netted big females and netted small males with them in the spring.
Oh, not even hooked? Just
not
sitting
even hooked.
right there with them.
Big landing net. Cause I've used a bigger landing net in the winter because these fish roll so bad.
Yeah.
And I use a shallow, bigger one so they don't roll the hooks up so bad.
Yeah.
And I've netted 2 small stripers in my life. I mean, this has been 16 years of fishing, but twice I have netted them, and there's been a small male.
That's a thing, though. So, if you've done it twice, it's not a coincidence.
So what's happened is that sometimes we've been fishing a spot, and I'll be out, and we'll get a fish on, maybe a better fish. I feel like a bigger female, a bigger fish, and I'll take the trolling motor and pull away from the structure just a little bit if there's some stumps in there, so my customers don't break off, because these fish fight really good.
Yeah.
And I've had it where I'll run back there and tell customers, hey, go and reel your lines in. We're going to net this one, because it's kind of if you're not catching a lot of fish, you want to take your time and get that fish in.
For sure.
Net it. I tag the fish as well, and we want the turnover time to be quick. Get a photo, and I've had customers burning baits in well off the bottom, and boom, get hit. Yeah. Usually it's not that big of a fish. It's usually smaller fish, but I swear I think those fish are following that bigger fish in, or just seeing what's going on. They're together. Because when I mark these fish in the fish finder, there's not just one. You mark multiple fish sometimes, so they like to hang together.
For sure. Well, we just had a question come in, and we talked about this a lot in the pre-show, and it was good. Cameron was asking some killer questions, and I was like, wait, save those, because we're gonna forget if we asked those before or during the show, is what I was thinking. But we had, his name's Eric Bregman. He said, can you discuss the impact of Florence in the Cape Fear striper population? Yeah. And then with that, kind of go into, you talked about some of the new, the receivers, I guess, for the tagging.
Yeah, listening stations.
Listening stations.
Yeah. So, it's hard to put a number, and I've heard anywhere from 40 to 60% loss in the Cape Fear River. I'm gonna lean towards lower than that, because already I've seen quite a few fish caught some fish. We're not seeing as many big ones, but like we were talking about earlier, we're not really a big fish season. Typically for me, bigger fish striper season is when it gets colder, and a lot of this fish concentrate downriver. So I'm gonna lean on the terms of maybe 40%. The positives are we lost a lot of the bigger catfish. A lot of the predator fish are going to eat the smaller stripers.
Yeah.
So I think our turnover will be better in the next couple of years with the stocking. Each year, the Cape River gets between 50,000 and 100,000 stage 3 babies, which are bigger, like 6 to 8 inch stripers.
Okay.
And so these fish, a lot of other stuff eat them. The stripers eat them, the catfish eat them, bass eat them. Well, we lost a lot of, especially big catfish. This is a lot of big flatheads and a lot of big blue cats that will eat those baby stripers. Died during this as well. So, talking to some of the biologists, we think that it will be a quicker turnover, which is a positive. I've already caught quite a few stripers. They haven't been a lot of big ones, 10 pounds, some 10 pounders, but a lot of, 2 to 5 pound fish. So, and I'm hearing way up the river, Castle Hayne, Northeast Cape River, up above number 3, between the locks and dams below. Everywhere people are catching stripers. So
that's good. That's good news.
And the more I hear, and I'm talking to people way up the river, all the way up to Fayetteville and stuff. Some people that I talk to, I kind of keep in contact with what they're seeing the stripers are doing to kind of understand it as a whole. And so I'm not all hope is not lost.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I can't wait to get out this river because this year because the river was never in good condition last winter.
Right.
We stayed in flood stage until May in the river,
right? Because
we just kept getting rain. There was so much water draining from the biggest historical rain in eastern North Carolina's history. So I caught some fish last year. They were small and wasn't many of them because the water was dirty. I mean, there were times I went and I think we'd catch one and we'd get 2 bites and catch one. So I'm really excited this year. We've been in a drought, which is a good thing really in far as river terms go, to get out there and see the fish I see on the fish finder, what I'm catching, let things have settled out. Everything else, it seems like what I've seen the river, you could comment on this as too, is I won't say things are back to normal, but it's pretty amazing. The shrimp came back.
Yeah.
I was really worried about the shrimp crop in the river this year because those stripers eat a lot of shrimp in the fall. I mean, back in the day, when I used to fish for them earlier in the year in October, they would have shrimp tentacles hanging out of their mouth constantly. And so I know it's an important thing. And the shrimp are back strong. The mullets are back strong. The menhaden are back strong. The gars are still in there in pretty good numbers, which isn't an indicator, but they seem to not get hurt at all.
For sure.
by foreign. So yeah, we lost a lot of fish. I don't think it's as bad as we thought it initially was. I think we lost a lot of fish downtown Wilmington, where the Cape Fear and the Northeast came together. I think it was the low oxygen levels were terrible there for about 2 weeks. We're talking like 0.3, 0.1. The river is typically anywhere from 4 to 5 in the summer, wow. and 6.0 or above in the winter, and we're down to 0.1 and 0.3 for over 2 weeks. Nothing can survive that. There's nothing. I mean, nothing that breathes air, oxygen out of water can survive from that. So I'm really excited about what's going to happen. The state's starting to put their listening stations back out, and real quick, a listening station is a device that picks up the sonic tags that we put in stripers. And so this will give us an idea because we only put sonic tags in bigger fish, typically fish that are over 24 to 26 inches. So we're talking those 5-6 pound fish, sometimes even bigger. So these are the fish that are the moving fish, and what we're excited about is getting the listening stations back out there to find out how many tags are left, how many bigger fish that have tags in them are out there and active, and that's gonna show some stuff as well. So the state's starting to put the listens. They pulled a lot of them out. A lot of them got messed up during the hurricane. The high waters messed them up, so they're getting those back in the river. We plan to start putting new sonic tags out as soon as hopefully this winter, but if not, right after that. So we're gonna start putting those electronic tags back out and just kind of get the ball turning towards the river again. A lot of the biologists I talked to are excited to get out there to see what's going on. They go out there and shock the fish and then tag them. The problem is we've been in a drought and we're not getting a lot of rain, and the high salinity levels makes it hard for the shock boat to work. It eats up the electricity. Mm-hmm. So they're not having much luck, which they're not deterred because it's low numbers. It's just that's normal when you have high salinity for the nymphs. Salinity doesn't affect us. High salinity is good for us because usually it's clear water because they had much rain. So I'm excited to get out there and see what's going on for sure.
So if they're putting 100,000 stripers in the river every year, and even though Florence, had a pretty big damper on the population, you would think that our striper population would be like exploding. Mm-hmm. So and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but so are they not able to breed? Are some of them able to breed? The
fish they put in there are sexually they can be sexually active. They have the goods. they are built to reproduce.
Goods.
They're not sterile. Yeah. But the problem is the main thing is the natural old school, historical spawning grounds are from roughly Fayetteville to Lillington, North Carolina, which is well above locking dam number 3, and so they can't get there. You've got 2 dams in front of them. Now, dam number 1, locking dam number 1, does have rock arch weirs for the fish to swim over, but they are working on those now to make them more efficient. There's some new technology coming out that's going to be pretty cool that hopefully is going to be used in the river soon in the next couple of years, where they're actually going to be able to scan the dam and actively see how the stripers are using the dam.
So like trail cameras for fish.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So right now we can tell when a fish goes over locking in number 1 if it has a sonic tag in it, has an electronic tag, because we have listening stations at the bottom. We can watch them go right up to it and over it, or turn around and go back downriver. Yeah. And when they were locking fish through, we could tell if they use a lock or if they use a rock weir. But now they're not locking fish through anymore. They want them to use the actual face of the dam and go over it naturally. But stripers particularly like to go over in larger groups, and right now we're seeing smaller groups use it, which means they need to change the pool. When they were doing the rock weirs, the architect that does this, he's world renowned for making these dams, building these dams for fish. But no dam, no river is like a snowflake. No two are the same. Yeah. Every fishery is different. And he said, we're going to make this. He said, I guarantee they're going to work. They're going to work when we do this. He said, but they might not work efficiently. He said, they're going to need adjustments, pool adjustments, bigger pools, smaller pools. And what they found out, the data so far, is the pools weren't big enough. So small groups are going over, but not large groups. You want those large beating groups to get up river together for more higher production spawn.
Gotcha.
So the idea is, long story short, is get number 1 right. It's continue being, engineered, architect, so it's better. Get the scanning data in there. Get a lot of these fish tags, so when they are using it, we can tell how they're using it. Okay, well, they're going over this way. They're stopping here, and they're turning around. They don't like something here. Layman's terms, we got to find out why. Use this data. Once number 1 is working efficiently as the biologists and engineers think they can, then number 2 and number 3 will be built the same way or very close to it. Yeah. And the idea now is that number 2 and number 3 will be done at the same time to save time and money. All the equipment will be on the ground ready to go, so they can do them at the same time. But we got to get number 1 right first. Yeah. It's very frustrating. You just want to snap your fingers and get it done, and it's been a very long process. I've been watching this process go on now for over 10 years. Really, where the last 10 years where it's really started to move forward and get some some publicity and people thinking about it, and lots of different organizations getting together and raising money and getting it done. And it's been slow, but we've seen a lot of strides. We've learned a lot about these fish that we didn't know 10 years ago, and I think we just keep doing that. Now there is some the biologists feel there is some natural spawning happening up in the Northeast Cape Fear River as well. The problem is there's just that we know of right now, we don't know of any real native spawning ground up there that would be good for stripers. There probably is. They have found some small fish up there that were probably, and some tests have to be done, some fin clips, genetics have to be done to find out if those fish are naturally spawned in the river. They feel pretty sure by the time of the year they caught them, the size they caught them, that they were not released fish. More studies got to be done, but we need to get more listening stations up in the Northeast, because we've really ignored the Northeast. And we have listening stations, but they're up only but so far. Then the fish go past there during spawning. A couple weeks later, come back down. Well, it's right when the other fish are going up the Cape Fear, so obviously they're going on a spawning run. Mm-hmm. So we need to know where those fish are going. So there again, it takes money to buy listening stations to do that more. So we're just it's a great learning curve, but we're learning,
Well, we had a good question here from Nick, and another one from Justin Trujillo, who fishes the river a lot. But Nick said, very controversial question, but I've got to ask it. Is there any total – that's not the one I was reading. Let me read this one first. From Ken. All fish have different frequencies of sonic tags, so you can track – or do they have different frequencies? Can you track individual fish?
Yes. So a real short – the way tracking a listening station works, it sends out they last about 2 to 4 years. The tag lasts about 2 to 4 years, and it's a scenario of water temperature – if it gets real cold, they don't last as long. It's usually about average of 3 years for the Cape River striper. And when they go past a listening station, it records the time of day, the date, the time of day, and then a number. It's a number. Okay. And that number has already been logged in. This was the 26-inch striper that was caught during Striper Fest, and we put a sonic tag in it. Now, there are some, these are some of these bigger biologist technical words, the biotrimity. tags.
Sounds good to me.
And it's their depth, essentially their depth tags.
Okay.
And we're starting to put more in those or in the fish, which is going to be some of that scenario they use on the lock and dam, where when the fish goes by, it will record and listen station the average depth, greatest depth, and shallowest depth that fish has been in the last, say, 30 days or 10 days or 5 days.
Wow.
To know where these fish are traveling, where they're hanging at, because we don't really know that. I mean, I've caught these fish as deep as 20 feet, and I've caught them as shallow as on a topwater plug.
Right.
So it's what does that answer? We don't know. But it's going to be more data that helps out,
sure.
and that's going to be some of the stuff that's happening. More of these tags that'll actually record the depth they've been. And I don't know exactly how many days back, but it's a month or 2 weeks of their shallowest depth, their deepest depth, their average depth before that. And when they go by, it records on the listening station. So but now keep in mind that this is another thing that's slowing this process down. Is once a month the state biologists have to go out there, pull up the listening station, hook a USB up to it in a laptop, and download all the information. If there's 50 daggone listening stations, that's going to take a couple weeks to do every one of them. So it's
like
very
a game camera.
it's very slow. People think it's now they have receivers that you can hook these things to a cell phone, and as soon as a fish goes by, they get a text message. But guess what? Those aren't cheap, and you couldn't it'd be very expensive to put them all. But the ones at the lock and dam are going to do that. They have, and they're going to do that. So that real important data using the rock weirs is going to be, we're going to get that data a little quicker. They're going to put some of those that will actually get it. Or if they don't, they're going to be checking them weekly, the ones that are in deeper water and stuff.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
Yep.
So this controversial question was, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but is there any scientific data that shows how many striper are lost to gill nets in that river per year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know there's definitely some gill net action down there, especially around the lock, not the lock and dam, especially down towards the ports, especially during trout season and stuff, and mullet season as well. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But in the past I've talked to some of the biologists about that, and it definitely, I'm sure it's happening, but I don't know to what extent. What extent? Those fish generally are together a little bit worse in numbers in the fall, October, November. Usually December they start to push out a little bit when it gets colder because the trout push out. So usually the nets aren't as bad. But I know, man, down there around the Brunswick River mouth, all that area, you do see that. I talked to a lot of the guys that shad fish up at the lock and dams in the spring, and they're running the shallow run nets on the surface. And I watch them all the time, and they don't seem to catch many stripers. Every once in a while they'll catch one, but for the most part, those seems like those shad nets just they're surface nets. Yeah. They don't go down that deep. I believe that's the way it works. They don't catch too many of them. I'm sure they catch some every once in a while, but for the amount of stripers I've seen up at that lock and dam number one before, when those guys were shad fishing, you think they'd catch more, and you just don't see that many.
Yeah.
But I will say this: most of the time, when the shad's good, the stripers aren't there. When the shad starts to slow down, the stripers start to show up when it's a little bit warmer.
Okay.
Typically, it's that March, April shad scenario, late April, especially into May when the stripers really show up at the lock and dams.
Gotcha.
Do you ever live bait fish?
I don't. I know a lot of old timers that do and done very well with it. The problem is access to live bait in the wintertime.
Yeah.
I feel like you got a cover area, and I've seen guys down there with goldfish and marsh minnows and everything do pretty well on them, but I just don't ever see them catch really big fish. Yeah. And I know there's probably some old timer listening to this right now going, "Oh, I've caught big ones on." I'm sure you can catch big ones on live bait, but I've seen the most times I've seen somebody do well on live bait in the river, fishing around them. They've done really well on numbers. But not bigger fish. And I like that thump. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I could do that instead of trolling with kids, I would for sure. Because seeing a bobber drop down, or they could feel that bite and start reeling, that'd be awesome. But
yeah, it almost seems like power drifting with a float rig with some weight down a bank. But you're probably just begging to hang up.
Yeah, there's that double standard.
Right.
What's going to happen?
Well, we're at over an hour already, which is crazy. I mean, we can keep going. We've got a giveaway that we're going to do. Jot brought some pretty cool stuff. We'll let him go into that. But is there any last, stuff you want to touch on? If someone's going to go try to do some striper fishing next week, what do they need to, any last little closing thoughts?
Yeah, cover area, try to find that pretty water.
Yep.
And water temperature-wise, I've caught these fish as low as, now not good numbers, but I've caught them as low as 36-degree water. on some of the colder winters we've had. But now that's been like during Striper Fest where we had to fish, and I would not go – if I went down there it was 36, I would not fish. But for me, I see the best bites usually from 60 degree to 40 degree water temperature. And it's really broad. But for me, is if it's in the 40s or in the 50s, I'm pretty happy with it. Once it gets down below 42 to 40 – it's hard to catch them. It really does. It really does. And usually that for most winters, that's into February and early March, later January, March. Now, a couple winters ago, we had a really mild winter. I crushed them in February before we had the hurricane. I crushed them in February. But the water temperatures were flirting in the upper 40s, lower 50s all winter long. Yeah. Typically, that's what you're seeing in the late fall, early winter, and early spring to early summer.
Gotcha.
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest tips that will help me is how you're working that bait, because I'm so used to twitching them, and especially in the river, I didn't want it on the bottom because I'm so worried about losing my lure.
Just rod tip low, and honestly, I reel just about as slow as you can reel, but you got to keep it moving. You cannot stop. If you stop, it's going to turn on its side and get hung up. But if you're pulling it along, and I tell my customer, it can rub the bottom. And they'll get excited at first, but I'm telling them, when you get a bite, you might miss them, but you're going to go, okay, that was a bite. That was not the bottom. Even if it gets hung up a little bit, you get excited. But as soon as you get hung up, you're like, wait, that wasn't a bite. Because a bite's going to be proactive. It's going to be that thump. So I just keep the rod tip low to the water and just slow reel and just keep it rubbing the bottom. If I'm working a crankbait or something, like I said, I don't mind if it hits the bottom. And the good thing is about the floating crankbait scenarios, because they float, is you can stop for a second. If you start feeling it rub the bottom a lot, you can stop and let it float up some and keep going again. Now, if you keep rubbing that crankbait on the bottom, you're going to get hung up. It's not if, it's when. It's going to happen. So I will stop and let it float up a little bit and then start again. Now, if it constantly rubs the bottom, I'm using too deep of a crankbait. Yeah. Hitting the bottom every once in a while, like at the deepest of the cast maybe, but if it's constantly rubbing, I'm having to constantly stop. Remember, if you're having to constantly stop and it's floating up, you're not moving the lure, you're not going to get a bite. They like the lure moving. They want that vibration. So kind of tune those crankbaits. They make crankbaits are easy to tune because, you got 1 to 2 foot, 2 to 5 foot, 3. Every company makes so many because they're so popular bass fishing. You can pick one that'll go to a depth. So keep that in mind. If it's rubbing the bottom constantly, you're going to lose it.
Yeah, save up about $400, and then you can go buy 2 of every bait.
It's amazing how many lures I've lost in that river. I've gotten more efficient about it, and I've learned also that when you get hung up, don't yank on it. I tell my customers, if they feel a bite and they set the hook and it's not, it's a bottom hook, come tight. Okay, stop jerking. Yeah. You keep jerking, you'll bury the hook. Because when you first get hooked up, if you can take your boat and go around the other side, and if it's hung on this side and you come on the other side of it and give it a good yank, a lot of times you get it back. You get it back when you can. But if you or that customer keeps yanking on it thinking they're going to get it back, you're going to bury it in there so much, or you're going to break the line. Either way, you're going to lose the lure.
For sure.
So as soon as you feel it come tight, go loose, slack line. Cruise up there, get on the other side of the hang, and make sure you're on the other side of it, and then come tight. And when you start with a line, give it a good hard jerk, and sometimes 50-50, you'll get it back. But don't go down there with just 5 swim bait hooks. I'm telling you, you'll lose them all the first hour, and you'll be done.
I will say that at Intercoastal Angler, and I always thought these were kind of a joke. It's like that hound dog or whatever it's called. It's like this heavy weighted lead.
Oh yeah,
deal, and it's got the rings,
retriever. Yeah, absolutely.
Ben Chesney, I was fishing with him one day, and he had one. He had broken off a baitcaster rod, so he just sawed it off, made it short, and had that as like his retriever rod. And every time we hung up that day, he would send that thing down there. It's like, you tighten your line up, and then you clip that onto the line and let that go down from another rod, and it would knock the bait off.
Yeah. And I will tell you this too, tackle wise, I go with a little bit heavier rods and reels, 8 to 15 pound class or 10 to 17, because of that. I want to be able to set that hook hard. Yeah. And I always use braid with the current and the depth.
Less drag in the current.
And less drag, and also filling that bite, sometimes. Braid just pays off tremendously. And honestly, you have a better chance of getting your lure back with braid than you do with mono. I used to have one of those hound dogs on the boat, but 2 years ago, and I haven't got another one, I sent it down there, and it got hung up. I lost the lure and the and I'm telling you, it was on. I had rope tied to it.
Did you really?
Like twine. I tied it to the boat, put the boat gear, and it broke the twine. So now I got a lure in it. So that was a $40 loss.
That was some rebar right there, probably.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen very often. But I don't have one right now because of that happened.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, those hound dogs. I don't own one either, but I think I'm gonna buy one. I'm about to start striper
for
fishing
there, yeah, I mean, it could definitely save you some time and money for sure. I've had one. I need to get another one. It's one of those things you think about it when you're on the boat, but you go to the tackle shop, and then you're back on the boat and said, damn, I didn't buy one.
For
I've
sure.
done that. I'm going to shackle up 3 times in a row, and I had something I need to have to finally write it down because I finally need it.
And I will say, like you were saying, a heavier duty rod, and with those bigger swim bait hooks like that, I like something really stout because, like, you fish, your little redfish rod or trout rod, and you try to swing and bury that hook in a striper's mouth.
I've had
Good
so many
luck.
friends go with me and bring a trout rod, and they get the same amount of bites I get, but they don't get the same amount of hookups. So I like that medium, minimal, even medium heavy, 10 to 17 pound class deal. You don't have to go as big reel. Still using 2500s and 3000 size. I like a 15-pound braid. I go a little heavier than a lot of people, but I'm fishing customers that don't pay attention. But the heavier rod is definitely, and you don't have to go the long rod. I use a 6.6 sometimes with my customers for that little bit more weight. Sensitivity's not there. Fish bites, you're gonna feel them. It's there.
Right on. Well, I will let you take away the giveaway. Sorry, I accidentally opened the comment up onto the screen there. But if you want, Jot brought a pretty awesome giveaway for y'all. So here it is.
Yeah, we got a Plano Z Series 3600 tackle bag, and also in here this holds 5 3600 stowaways. But I have replaced 3 of the 5, and there's 3 restrictor anti-rust stowaways in there. So great bag, waterproof, nice bottom here, doesn't leak, has anti-slide. I use one of these for my terminal tackle box. I have a little bit bigger one for my lures. I love these things, man. They even look pretty good too. But
I like that hard bottom too. It's
yeah,
got some
hard
foam pads on there.
Great. Yeah, it's got the pads on it. And if you're on a kayak or a smaller boat, it's got clips so you can clip it for it doesn't go anywhere. But this is a good, no frills industrial, no zippers, so nothing to get stuck.
Most tackle bags are going to those clips now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it makes sense. I mean, frustration is important as a fishing guide or an angler.
Yeah,
the fish can be frustrating enough. You don't want to fight your tackle.
Exactly. Well, guys, thank y'all for tuning in. We're going to do this giveaway now, but I forgot to say this in the beginning. I've been a little nervous with doing this. This is my first episode without Billy. But share this if y'all enjoyed it. It definitely helps us out kind of growing and finding some new viewers. And it's just the most helpful way. Also, if you go to our Instagram page and follow us on Instagram, you can kind of keep up. We're a little more dialed in on keeping the Instagram updated. And one more big thing that helps us out a lot is if you do listen to the podcast, or if you don't, if you go rate us, hopefully a 5-star rating. If not a 5-star, that's all we've gotten is 5-star rating so far. So
Let's keep it
I'd
there.
hate for you to be the first person to give us. Now someone's going to go in there and give us a 1-star because I said that. Please don't. But,
We love you, 1 star.
Exactly. Best podcast ever, 1 star. But it just helps us out a lot. So if you can go give us a rating on iTunes, that'd be killer. But yes, I'm gonna do a random selection here. Caleb Barber. So Caleb Barber just won the giveaway. Hey, Captain Jot, how do you like the Plano Edge? He had actually asked about the Plano Edge.
Hey, yeah.
So I scrolled up to his comment. That's pretty, now you can know for yourself, Caleb.
There you go.
So awesome, Jot. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And Cameron, killer job. I'm gonna switch to to this camera here for a second. You guys, thank y'all for tuning in. Me and Cameron are going to be the face of Eastern Current from here on out, and I'm sure we're definitely going to have Jot back on
No doubt.
plenty of times. Great guy. He's got a ton of information, and he answers questions really well. And I feel like I wanted to open this notepad here and be taking notes today, but it got me fired up to striper fish again. I'd been a little
ready.
down and out after the hurricane. I didn't fish at all last year. And excited to do it this year. So you're not fishing the striper tournament, but everyone else is going down, especially Jamie. Jamie, I'm going to crush you this year. I'm just kidding. Jamie,
Man,
will crush me.
I hope the weather stays right. It's going to be great.
It should be.
And just real fast, Striper Fest is the 27th and 28th of March.
Okay.
The Friday evening banquet, if you come to the banquet, is the 27th that evening, and then tournament is on the 28th of March this year.
28th
so
of March.
Usually pretty good fishing time of the year. I really like late March down there myself, so it should be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm excited. And we had been doing it in January.
Last year we did it March. We started last year in March, but it was the hurricane, so it really didn't matter. A couple of fish were caught, but it really didn't matter. But it's mid-January is tough. And it's hard to have something before Christmas. You know, everybody's wide open right now. So we decided to go to March, and I'm
awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the event, and it's growing every year. All the money goes to the river. All the money goes to the river. So,
yeah, it's an awesome event.
Yeah.
I mean, you can come hang out the morning of, but also the night before the get together and the meal. What is the actual banquet?
Yeah.
The get-together.
I mean, we buy tags, we buy sonic tags, we buy listening stations, we do water quality studies. All kinds of money comes out of that for the river, and all the money from the tournament itself goes to the Cape River Striped Bass Foundation, which goes 100% to the fishery. So it raises really good funds that have helped a lot to jumpstart this fishery restoration plan.
Yeah, it's a great way, just by coming to the dinner and paying to come to the dinner, it's a great way to help out the community here or help out the fishery.
Some great silent auction, live auction items as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
CapeRiverWatch.com.
If you want tickets. Well, cool, guys. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. I think this was episode 27, but we will see y'all next week. Again, thanks. Later.